Hello, this is Gregory Bennett. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Here a little late. We actually had a fire alarm here in my building, and so just a few minutes late. I want to talk to you guys about the different strategies of a real estate investor, and what are the best strategies for you. When I started off investing, and I started investing really early. A year out of college, I started investing. I had read at 17 years old that really the way to riches is real estate. It never left me. So a year out of college, I bought my first property. It was the buy and hold strategy. And so I did that for a number of years, buying and holding properties. Did it for a number of years, about 5 years in a row. The goal at the time was to buy one property a year. And so I did that, bought one property a year for 5 years, had 5 properties, was a young landlord. And I loved it. I had another stream of income. It was passive income along with my full-time job. And everything was great. I wanted to do more. So I started, actually got my real estate license. The real estate agents, they weren't working. They weren't working fast enough for me. So I went ahead and got my real estate license, and kind of the rest is history. But I started off buying and holding real estate, and like I said, I really enjoyed it. At that time in my 20s, I didn't really have a lot of money, just enough to buy that one property a year. So I did that, but I got really good at finding properties. And so what I would do back then was I would find a partner to then partner with me to flip properties. And so that's what I did. I had a couple agents, one in particular in my real estate office. I was a Remax agent at the time. And I would find the properties, and then they would partner with me. And we started flipping properties. As I was buying and holding, him and I would flip properties. Later, probably about 10 years ago, I got into wholesaling properties. And for me at that time, wholesaling was the best model because it was just almost risk-free. And now I still wholesale properties. I actually average about $30,000 per wholesale deal. And for me, it's probably one of the best models. And so I'm going to talk about all 3 models, and I teach all 3 models. I often get asked when I buy a property, how do I determine whether I'm going to hold the property, flip the property, or wholesale the property? And it really depends on where I am at the time. Do I have other properties that I'm also flipping? Because I don't like doing too many at a time anymore. I did one time that I would have about 10 flips going on at various stages. And so I don't do that anymore. But just depends. And I'll talk more about kind of my model for wholesaling, for flipping, for buy and hold. Buy and holds, I generally like only buying and holding townhouses or row houses, interior units versus in units, just because it's just a lot of less maintenance. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, that kind of thing. And we'll talk more about that when we really get into the buy and hold. But if you guys have any questions along the way, please put them in the comment section, ask the questions. I'm happy to answer the questions. And so let's talk about wholesaling. And I teach wholesaling. I teach in a real estate investment. I have a real estate investment coaching program. And most of my students are actually wholesalers. And I like that because it gives one an opportunity to get started investing in real estate. And the reason why I like wholesaling, even now for myself, is because out of all the strategies, there's the least amount of risk. There's little to no money that needs to be put up. Nobody's looking at your credit. Wholesaling is primarily the act of finding a property from a motivated seller, putting it under contract well below market, and I'll give you the formula that we use, and then assigning that contract to another investor, what we call a cash buyer. That's what wholesaling is. And so amongst all the strategies, I actually like wholesaling the best because it's just less risk. And when we talk about fix and flip in a minute, I will tell you that fix and flip carries the highest amount of risk, but it carries the highest amount of rewards. In our area, wholesaling, our wholesalers make somewhere on average between $15,000 and $20,000. Some of the more experienced wholesalers do much better than that, around $30,000. A couple guys here in my office, my real estate office, that they average about $30,000 a wholesale deal. And so, so in a lot of cases, the way I determine whether I'm going to wholesale a property, buy and hold, or flip the property is kind of really predicated on the property and where I am financially at the time. If it's a property, let's say it's in Baltimore or really DC, that's a row house, I will probably hold that property because that kind of fits my model. Anything outside of my model, I'll probably hold. Although I am starting back to doing a lot of other flipping right now. So wholesaling, you're not dealing with contractors. The cash buyers deal with the contractors. So you're not hiring contractors. You're basically finding properties, and that's the key to all the strategies. It's just finding these opportunities and then putting these opportunities under contract and then assigning those contracts to another investor. Some of the other advantages is you need very little experience to do this. I've had a lot of investors that I've coached that have made $30,000, $40,000, even $60,000, within 2 or 3 months, doing 2 or 3 wholesale deals. So it takes very, very little experience. It's very, very minimal risk, no contractors. And as you can see, you can make big profits. And so here's one thing that I see. I see a lot of the fix and flippers that were big time fix and flippers, say 10 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, I see them wholesaling. And that's all they are doing is wholesaling because they're minimizing the risk. And like I said, the reward is pretty high. Now, I'm going to go over wholesaling and then flipping properties. Those are 2 of the cash building strategies. And so as a real estate investor, we have 2 strategies. One is a cash building strategy where we're investing for cash, and that's wholesaling and flipping properties. And then lastly, I'll talk about investing for cash flow, equity, and appreciation. That's our buy and hold strategy. My suggestion is to combine the 2, because with the buy and hold strategy, which is the strategy that you have to have to, we often talk about building wealth. This is how you build wealth. This is how you retire financially free. This is how you leave a legacy with your buy and hold strategy. But then the question is, where do I get the cash to then buy and hold? And you get the cash from wholesaling properties or flipping properties. And so when we're talking about wholesaling properties, we're basically, we go by a formula. The formula is called the Mayo formula. Mayo stands for maximum allowable offer. And so with the maximum allowable offer, we take the after repair value, which we call the ARV. After repair value, we multiply that by 65%, and then we subtract the repair cost. And that number gives us the MAO, the maximum allowable offer that we make to the motivated seller. And so if the after repair value in a certain area is $300,000, and we take 65% of that, that gives us $195,000. And if we subtract the repair cost, let's say repair cost is $60,000. So 195 times, minus 60,000 gives us 135. 135,000 is your maximum allowable offer that you make to the motivated seller. And so the number one mistake that investors make is that they buy the properties wrong. So this formula for wholesalers, this formula for Fix and flippers, rehabbers, buy and hold investors use the same formula, but for wholesalers, it's 65% of the after repair value minus repair costs. If you buy it any higher than that, then you're a cash buyer, because you're going to assign that contract to a cash buyer who's going to take it over at 70% of the after repair value minus repair costs. That 5% difference is your wholesale fee, or 5% of the after repair value. In that scenario where $300,000 was the after repair value, you're just simply taking 5% of the 300,000, which is 15,000. That should be your wholesale fee. And so you want to make sure you put it under contract for the right price, so that a cash buyer like myself was happy to buy at 70%. If you put it under contract at 70% and try to wholesale it for 75% or even 80%, which I see a lot of wholesalers make that mistake, nobody's going to buy the property. Cash buyer needs to make money, so you got to put it on the contract low enough so the cash buyer feels comfortable with buying a property. Now, speaking of cash buyers, you guys, part of wholesaling is putting together a cash buyer's list. You have to put together a cash buyer's list, and you've got to find some cash buyers. So because when you find a property, you want to be able to wholesale that property to somebody else, to a cash buyer. And so you've got to put together a list. So where do you find the list? How do you make the list? And so the answer is just a number of places. Auctions. You can go to auction. There's auctions in front of the courthouse steps a couple times a week. You find out when those auctions are, and you just go to the auction, and you just walk around writing their names, numbers, email addresses down, and asking them, what exactly are you looking for? I'm a wholesaler. What exactly are you looking for? Investor meetups, RIA meetings, real estate investment association meetings. You find cash buyers there. We just had one Saturday, and I had all of our cash buyers line up on one wall, and all the wholesalers just kind of went down the list, down the wall, and wrote and made their cash buyers list. So I have a meetup. So at my investor meetup, there's always cash buyers there. So those are the two primary places that you can find cash buyers. There's other places you can get referrals. You can Google real estate investors in a certain area. If I'm able to put a property under contract that's not in my area and I don't know any cash buyers, I will just Google either cash buyer or real estate investors in that area to get my cash buyers. So cash buyers is not that difficult to find. What's difficult is for a lot of people is finding the deals, and that's the goal. And so how do you find deals? And so here's how you find deals. And this goes for whether you want to wholesale, fix and flip, buy and hold. And so when I think about my real estate investors that I coach and where they're finding their deals, a lot of them are getting them from auctions. And so either auctions in front of the courthouse steps they're bidding and winning, or online auctions, hubzoo.com, auction.com. Those are some of the national brands. And then there's some local, ashland.com, alexcooper.com. Those are local to the DMV. That's where they're finding their deals from the auction, and they're winning. They're winning at least one or two a week from the auctions. And then a lot of my investors are networking with wholesalers and getting deals from wholesalers. Their probate is great. They're going down to the probate office or getting a list. Probate is the best. And so the investors that are making $30,000, a wholesale deal, $40,000, even $50,000, it's always a probate deal, because 80% of the time when one passes away, they die owning real estate. And of that 80%, 70% of them own those properties free and clear. So there's lots of room for negotiation with the executors of the estates or personal representatives. There's lots of room for negotiation. And so we go after probate. Social media. A lot of my investors are posting on social media. Calling. We get lists and call. We call absentee owners. Right now, it's just great to get a pre-foreclosure list and call that list a pre-foreclosure list. We call those lists, or we get virtual assistants. We pay them somewhere between $4 and $10 an hour for 4 hours a day, and we train them to call for us and set up an email. And set up an appointment and shoot us an email with the appointment. Bandit signs. A few of my investors are putting out "We Buy Houses" signs. So the bandit signs work. Honestly, all of these things work. Driving for dollars, getting in your car, picking a neighborhood that's an older neighborhood, and then using an app like Deal Machine. One of my investors pulled up in front of a house that looked to be vacant or abandoned, pulled out his app from his phone and put in the address, and the app pulled up the homeowner's name and phone number. In front of the house, they called the homeowner, he picked up, he wasn't there, but they set an appointment for the next day, and then put him under contract and wholesaled that property, closed on it, and made $25,000 in 2 weeks. That's driving for dollars. So driving for dollars is something that you guys can do every day if you want. That's a good way of finding property. So there's a number of great ways: postcards, direct mail. And so I've used direct mail to absentee owners in a particular zip code. You always want to choose older neighborhoods where you can buy low and sell high. You want to choose older neighborhoods. And then of everything that I just mentioned in terms of finding deals, you don't want to do everything. Choose one thing and be great at it. Choose one thing and master it. Start making money with that one thing, and then add something else along to that. Now you got two things that are making money for you. And then be persistent, follow up. We always like to say the fortune is in the follow-up. You've got to do a lot of following up, but you've got to be patient. I always tell the story about the wholesaler in Philadelphia that took him 6 months to get his first deal. He just focused on probate. Took him 6 months to get his first deal, but he was patient. Got that first deal, made $30,000. Next month, got another deal, made $20,000, kept going because he was patient. His following up started working for him, quit his job. Now he's a full-time investor, full-time wholesaler, probate, and he makes well into the six figures every year. And so you've got to be patient. You got to be persistent, but you've got to follow up. You've got to do a real good job of following up. And then branding, networking. Let people know that this is what you do. Whether you're wholesaling, fixing and flipping, or buying and holding, you got to let people know. I tell my real estate agents all the time that you can't be a secret agent. As a real estate investor, it's the same thing. Everybody needs to know, because you just never know. Who knows that? You never know who might be in a situation where they got to sell a house fast. I've got another investor that's in my program. While everybody's going down to the probate office trying to get probate deals, he does a great job of branding himself. And so a lady in church, her mother passed away. She was getting inundated with phone calls, with postcards, letters. Someone even came and knocked on her door because the information, is public information. She chose him. He's in her church. He branded himself well in his church, and just kind of overall, everybody knows that he's a real estate investor. And he actually got the deal. She said, I'm getting all these phone calls, all these postcards, letters, but I know you, I trust you, make me an offer. He made an offer, put her on the contract, and he actually wholesaled that deal. And so branding, networking, letting everybody know that you're a real estate investor. That's, when I talk to some of the investors that are making seven figures, and I ask them, well, how are you finding deals? They say it's this networking, it's this branding. People know that I'm a real estate investor, and they know that they can trust that I can close the deal. And so I get a lot of deals that way. And so that's what you've got to do. You've got to brand yourself. Of all the things that I mentioned, bandit signs, probate, everything, you've got to brand yourself, networking, referrals. Try to build your business to be a referral-based business. And that's what I've done. And I get calls too. I get calls every day with deals. Now, to be fair, most of them aren't deals, once I do the numbers, but I get the opportunities. And we all know that this is a numbers game. And so we want to get as many deals as we can. Throw as many of these deals up on the wall, and something's going to stick. And they stick. They do. And we buy these properties. And so that's what you're going to have to do. If you're not good at anything else, I want you to put in your mind that I'm going to be good at finding the deals. Because as a real estate investor, the deals are the goal. And so as a young investor in my early 20s, I just said, I'm going to be the best person on the block that can find deals. And so I just kind of made it my mission to find deals. I had a marketing strategy to find deals. And so that's what you're going to have to do, because now I've got options. I can either buy and hold, which I did in my 20s, or fix and flip. When I ran out of money to buy and hold, I would flip properties with partners, always had a partner. And then, or kind of in recent years, 10 years, you can also wholesale. So that's wholesaling. Again, ask. You can go to the comment section, ask me any questions you want about wholesaling. It's just a great way to get started, make your money fast. One last thing I want to say about wholesaling before I move on to fixing and flipping. Don't just wholesale. When you wholesale a deal, wholesale it to a cash buyer that's going to allow you to follow the deal, to follow the progress of the renovations, so that you can learn. I mean, that's just how I learned. I learned by watching. I would find the deals, and another guy would put up the money that was in my real estate office, and then I would just follow and ask a lot of questions. The inspection process, the permit process, the materials and the material costs, the order in which everything is done, the finishes. Why are we choosing, this type of hardwood floors versus another type of hardwood floors, windows, and then the cost of everything. How much does it cost to put on a roof? How much are windows? $300 a window. So I had to learn all that stuff over a period of time until I was able to get to the point to do it all myself. And many years ago, I just learned it all myself by being there, not taking a class, but by being there, being on the job. And so as a wholesaler, you want to do that as well, because you've got to put in your mind that you're not going to be a wholesaler forever. I mean, at the very least, you're going to wholesale and get that cash to then buy and hold. Use some of that cash to buy and hold. One of my investors that I coach, for every 2 wholesale deals that they do, they take some of that cash to then go and buy and hold a property for cash flow, equity, appreciation, building a portfolio for generational wealth. That's what they do. All right. And so let's move on. So I have done a lot of wholesaling, but I also have done a lot of flipping. And so I like flipping too. I will tell you that of the 2 cash building strategies, obviously fixing and flipping, you're going to make the most money. So here in our area, the national average is about $70,000 a flip. Here in our area, because the price is so high in Washington, D.C., and they're creeping up here where I am in Prince George's County, Maryland. The average flipper makes about $100,000 a flip. Generally speaking, when we're getting the after repair value, let's say there's a property, I just flipped a property in Northeast DC, in a Brentwood area of Northeast DC. Actually sold it for $600,000. 20%, generally 20% of the after repair value is probably what you're going to make in terms of your profit. That's your aim. And so I was aiming to make $120,000 on that deal. At $600,000, which I thought was the after repair value. Actually, because of the market we're in, It actually sold for 650, so I actually made more. But I'm generally looking, if it's in an area where I can sell for 400, I'm looking to make $80,000. It's in an area that's selling for 800,000, like Northwest, 800,000. Although I just looked at comps there, and prices are real; they're in the millions now, and in some of the areas. But if I can sell for 800,000, I'm looking to make about 160,000. So we can do that here in our area. In the DMV, average flips, you're going to make about 100,000. National average is about 70,000. And so that's why a lot of people risk it and flip. Now, I will tell you, most novice flippers or rehabbers, they lose money. And so you've got to know what you're doing. There's a lot of moving parts when you're flipping properties. And so I advise you, number one, if you want to flip, to get a partner, and then that has the experience. Even if you've got to put up all the money and you found the property, there's a lot of rehabbers that will hire me to consult, and they'll put me on the deal. Hey, Greg, I'll split the profits with you 50-50, because I want to make sure it's a successful deal. And you just need to lend your knowledge, and I do that because they don't want to lose money. And so that's what I would advise. I would advise, at least initially, to get a coach or a mentor or a partner that has experience for your first few flips, at least your first one or two, but then also just focus on cosmetic flips. Flips that are, you did the numbers work, but the house only needs new kitchen, new bathrooms, new flooring, paint, maybe roof, maybe windows. That's it. Cosmetic. We're not. And then electrical, maybe you need to put in some recessed lighting. That's it. I wouldn't do a flip for my first few flips where I've got to add square footage. I've got to add a bathroom, add a bedroom, that kind of thing. Not for your first one. Because, there's just a lot of moving parts and there's lots of unknown. I mean, I've done some recently where everything looked good. We took down the walls and then, all the wall joists were eaten up by termites, had major termite issues. I've got one now that I just bought 2 weeks ago, and the floors, it's sitting on a slab, and the floors, the subflooring, the floor joists, all eaten up by termites. And so we've got to replace all that, and we didn't even know that we had to do that. So you've got to be careful on flips. I do advise, if you know what you're doing or can get someone, you can double, triple your money that you would make as a wholesaler by doing that, but it does require experience, you guys. And if it's not your experience, somebody else's experience, again, a flipper, they're going to use the same Mayo formula, but a flipper can buy the property at 70% of the after repair value minus repair costs. So that's your numbers. And so most flippers fail there. They buy the properties wrong, walk away if the numbers aren't right. And so some will say, well, I'm supposed to make $80,000. The numbers say that I should make $50,000. It's still not. I still wouldn't do it. I'm happy with making 50. No, because you can go in there. If you're hiring a contractor and something goes wrong, then now it's a change order. Now you've got to pay them more. So you got to stick to your numbers. So now a change order is not going to hurt you. And so you've got to really, 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 really know what you're doing. You've got to consult a coach, mentor, rely on a contractor. So let's talk about contractors for a second. One of the biggest challenges in our industry as an investor is contractors. And there's more good contractors than bad, to be honest, but it's just the bad ones that, number one, gives all the other contractors a bad name. But unfortunately, number two, the bad contractors, they get the business because their prices are lower. Then they go in and they don't know what they're doing, or they'll mess up, or they'll cut corners. That's mainly what they do. They know what they're doing, but they say in their mind, well, I'm really not getting paid what I should, even though this is what I bid on the property. I'm gonna cut a few corners to make up, for the lost money. Get an experience. I had a property many years ago where I got 3 estimates. I said, okay, I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna get 3 estimates. One estimate was 80,000, another one's 125, but then the other one was 150. Now, I chose the one at 80, and boy, that was a huge mistake. I went with the cheapest one, and that was just a huge mistake. It was the worst one. I actually had to fire that one, go with the one that gave me the quote at 150 to let him finish the job. But then it costs more because contractors really don't like coming behind each other because they don't really know what the previous contractor did. So it cost me even more money. So I learned my lesson. We're going to go with the best contractor. We're going to look at we're going to have them give us some referrals. We're going to look at some past jobs that they've done. You know, we're going to really vet them. And so I've done that. And so now I actually have 4 crews that's been with me, you know, for no less than 10 years that I know, I trust. And so that's what you're going to have to do if you're flipping properties. Pull the right comps, make sure your numbers are correct, choose the right contractor, know the scope of work. And so, and know what the finishes should look like. I flipped a property in an area here in our area, an area called Tacoma Park, Maryland, where the finishes that I put into the house, and this was kind of early on in my career, wasn't kind of conducive to what that neighborhood called for. But to me, it was just a beautiful finish. Like I was like, this is going to sell fast, and it didn't. Other houses that didn't look as nice as mine sold faster than mine, but their finishes were what the neighborhood kind of called for. And so I had to lower my price in order to get it sold. And so I learned a valuable lesson on that project. You really have to look and see what's being sold in that neighborhood. You've got to go to open houses. You've got to look online to see what the pictures look like of the houses that recently sold. I mean, back then I was using cherry floors, cherry cabinets. My backsplash was kind of really jazzy. But now I use a similar backsplash now that you guys kind of see in the picture. I use a beveled subway tile that's very conservative. I don't use cherry anymore. You know, I use either a natural or a light or a mocha that's dark. I only use white cabinets anymore. You know, I'm a little more conservative because of that experience. You know, we use, you know, like a grayish kind of marble looking countertop, granite countertop. And so I learned from that lesson. And so when you're flipping, you got to look at the neighborhood. What are the other investors doing? What are the houses that have just recently sold for top dollar? What do they look like? And you just simply have to match. But not only with the finishes, you got to match with bedrooms and bathrooms. And so the property that I mentioned that I recently sold in Northeast DC, houses, I thought mine was going to sell for 600 because there was a house that was 3 doors down sold for a little more than 600, but it had an extra bathroom. And so you've got to look at that and price accordingly. You know, even though mine actually, because of the market, sold for more than theirs, I priced mine a little lower because they had an extra bathroom, and that's what you have to do. You got to look at bedrooms and bathrooms. If a house has more bedrooms and bathrooms than yours, then you got to match that in order to get that top dollar. And so you got to look at those things. You've got to look at the comps when you're doing those things. And then you've got to know what you're doing, what the scope of work is, what to tell the contractors you want according to what's being done in the area. When you're buying properties, you've got to, and holding them to flip, you've got to consider all the holding costs. There's cost to hold, there's interest on the loans, there's utility costs, electric, gas, things like that. And so there's a number of different holding costs again, you may have to pay the lender. Most of the lenders that I use, I don't pay them until the end after I sell the property. But there are holding costs. You do have to do a draw schedule. And so let's say that there's a property that you're flipping and the cost is, the rehab cost is $90,000. You want to break that up into 3 draws, 30 for the first part of the work, another 30,000 that you get after the second draw is completed, and another $30,000 after the third draw is completed and the property is on the market. And so you've got to be able to do a draw schedule. You let your contractor help you with that draw schedule. Sometimes a hard money lender, if you're going to use a hard money lender, will help you as well with that schedule. Also know that if you're doing a major renovation, there's inspections, there's permits that have to be done. So you've got to know what those are all about, the different types of inspections and permits. Again, there's change orders that could take place, but always know that there could be a change and that's going to cost you. And then there's always the question of once you've completed the property and completed the project, are you going to sell the property? Are you going to get an agent to sell the property? Are you going to get the property staged or not staged? 100% of the time I get an agent to list because now that kind of opens it up to the whole world. But then I also stage, and I've learned my lesson about staging or not staging. And I had a property I didn't stage. I wanted to save my money, wouldn't sell. As soon as I staged it, it sold. And so I learned my lesson. So 100% of the time, I don't care what kind of market we're in, I always feel like I'm going to get about 15% more because I staged. And there's always, when you're flipping properties, there's always some defects, minor kind of punch out items. If you don't stage, their eyes are going to go directly to those defects. If you don't stage, when you do stage, their eyes are going straight to the furniture and the staging and how they can imagine, themselves living in the property with their furniture. And so staging, 100% of the time I stage. Funding, how do we fund these flips? You can use cash. I recommend not, but you can use cash. You don't want to, you lose leverage. You want to keep your cash. As a real estate investor, you guys, whether you're flipping properties or holding properties or even wholesaling, we build our wealth and we get rich using other people's money. We don't use our own money, very little. And so we're borrowing money from banks, from hard money lenders, from private lenders, from joint venture partners. We use other people's money to build our wealth. And that's what I want you guys to remember. So on flips is the same thing. That property that I mentioned in Northeast DC, I bought the property using a hard money lender. I got the rehab money by using a hard money lender, but I still needed money for closing costs and to get the first draw started. I used a private lender, paid them 10%, paid them off when I sold the property. Didn't put up any of my own money. Had to put up some money because there were a couple of change orders, but theoretically, I didn't put up any money to buy the property or to close on the property or to get started with the first draw. I borrowed all that money. And when I ran my numbers and I did the Mayo formula, all the numbers work. And so that's really my model. And so you often hear buying money with no money down. You can do it. I do it all the time. That's my main model. I use a hard money lender, acquisition rehab, and use a private lender for closing costs and get the first draw started. And then in the end, when I sell the property, I pay everybody back. But partnering, setting up an LLC, a multi-member LLC, and putting both members in that LLC, drawing out who's to do what, that's a way to get started flipping. Joint venturing. I've joint ventured with a lot of my students. I've joint ventured with contractors. Like I buy the property and they put up all the money for the rehab and then we split the profits. So I don't have to worry about managing the property. They have a vested interest. So I've done that with my contractors a lot. So partnering is a great way to do these flips. So wholesaling, flipping properties, Those are the two best cash building strategies. Keep in mind, though, you guys, here's what a lot of investors don't realize, that even flipping properties and wholesaling properties, that's still active income. That's not passive income. When you flip a property and sell that property, there's no more income coming in. When you wholesale a property, you make your money, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. That's your only payday. It's active income. It's good money. And if you can build it to be a business, which a lot of my investors have, then it becomes passive income because it's a business. But kind of one-off flips, one-off wholesale deals, it's active income. It's not until you start buying and holding that you get passive income, and that's how you become wealthy. Passive income makes you wealthy. Don't forget that. The best strategy is to buy and hold, but we use flipping, wholesaling to buy and hold. So let's talk about buying and holding. And so what I like to tell people about buying and holding is, you guys, of all the strategies, this is the most important to your life, and honestly, to your children's life, to your children's children's life. You want to leave a legacy. You want to build generational wealth. Now, everybody says that, but very few do it. Very few build generational wealth. Very few leave a legacy. Part of the way you do it is through your buy and hold strategy. Now, there's other ways. There's annuities, which are great. There's life insurance to protect your wealth, which is great also. All of those things preserve your wealth and give you passive income. Index, annuities do that as well. A lot of people are into the stock market, all those kinds of things. But also buying and holding real estate will give you passive income, because when you buy a property, so I'm buying properties, I own a portfolio of real estate. Here's what I like so much about it. I can pass that real estate on and that wealth to my daughter. And as much money as I'm making now, she'll be able to make it as well. And so that's what I like best about it. And then if she treats those properties right, if she manages those properties right, whether she manages or a property manager manages, she can pass them on to her children, and so on and so forth. So that's why I like buy and holding. And so you guys have to buy and hold. Where do you buy and hold? I like buying and holding in neighborhoods that what we call kind of B or C neighborhoods, not the best affluent neighborhoods because you can't get a good deal, not what we call a D neighborhood because some people will call those war zones. I don't want to buy in areas where there's lots of board ups or there's going to be a lot of vandalism, things like that, or areas where the property values are going to go down. The best places to buy properties are kind of B minus C neighborhoods where you can get a great deal and buy with equity in there. I want to buy with equity in there. You can still buy in those neighborhoods where the property values are appreciating. And so you want to buy in areas where that are appreciating. Because the reason why we're buying and holding is for two reasons. Number one, to get that cash flow. And I prefer to rent to voucher holders, Section 8 tenants. So we want that cash flow, but that automatic cash flow that's going to come from the government. But then we want the property values to go up. I always talk about the property I bought about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just doing very well. I actually heard from the tenant today. She kind of inherited a puppy and wants me to allow her to keep the puppy. And first I said, no, it's in the lease, you can't have it. And then she called back, said, well, then I promised the kids we could have it, but if I have to kill it, I will kill the dog now. And of course I said, oh, you can't kill the dog, you can keep it. She was just playing on my emotions, but I was good with it. But anyway, that property, she's a voucher holder. The district government pays me every month throughout the pandemic, pays every month, never misses, but bought the property for $200,000, probably owe around 180 now. But it's gone up to $550,000. So I've got a ton of equity in there, and I've got a positive cash flow. Um, and as the value goes up, and it's in DC, DC will always appreciate. It's a capital city. Every capital city of every country, you know, is never going to depreciate. And so DC, we're lucky. I'm lucky because I'm here in the DMV. You know, DC will always appreciate. Even during the recession, 2007, 2008, maintained its value. DC did. So those are the kind of areas that I like to invest in. I do have properties in Baltimore, Maryland, and that's just a cash flow play. I'm not expecting a lot of appreciation, but I am making initially $800,000, $900,000 a month in positive cash flow. So those are cash flow plays. So I like buying in those kind of areas where they're good areas. People feel safe. They're going to appreciate and have cash flow, or they're going to give me just a ton of cash flow. Even on my buy and holds, if I have to make repairs at all, I just want to make cosmetic, just cosmetic repairs. I'm not going to do a full gut job on a buy and hold. And that's just me. I know others that will. Even if the numbers work, I just don't want to go through all of that because just like, again, there's too many moving parts and you can make a lot of mistakes. And so on my buy and holds, I just want to replace flooring, paint walls, maybe do the kitchen and the bathrooms, got the kitchen and the bathroom. But that's it. Just cosmetic repairs, something that we can be in and out in 90 days, and then I'm ready to rent. And so that's what I'm looking for on my buy and holds. You want to get them low as you can. I still buy my buy and holds according to the formula, 70% of the asset repair value minus repair costs. I still look for pre-foreclosures, auction properties, probates. I still network tired landlords. We're going to see a lot of tired landlords now as some of these moratoriums get lifted. And a lot of these landlords are going to have to rent out to, start evicting their tenants who hadn't paid in 18 months. And so we're going to have a lot of these buy and hold properties coming on the market. A lot of distressed properties, a lot of abandoned properties. Put yourself in a position to do one. And so, like, my goal has always been, and it started, in my early 20s, I want you guys to set a goal of at least one buy and hold a year. At least one. You're going to build wealth. You're going to build a lot of wealth that way. One a year. My daughter just got out of college last year, and so she bought a property in May, her first property in May. And I told her, I said, your goal is to buy and hold one property a year. And so that's what she's doing. So she bought that property, a fixer-upper. We're in the midst of fixing it up. And she hopefully will be moving in by the end of this month. One a year, you guys, one a year. I like to say on my buy and hold, you buy them right, pay them down, and pay them off. Buy them right, pay them down, pay them off. I believe in paying off properties. I know a lot of other people don't, but I lived through the recession. I had a small portfolio of about 13 properties in 2007. Slowly but surely, because my income was more than cut in half, and it lasted for a long time. Slowly but surely, my tenants weren't paying. I wasn't selling enough houses and, to subsidize. And so I just started selling some of my properties off. So that's why, but if I had them paid off, then I'd be good. And a lot of investors, they survived and they didn't have to sell off any of their properties. That wasn't my story. I did. And so since then, I've been rebuilding back very quickly, because once you have the knowledge, you can do anything. The portfolio, and that's what I've done, but I pay mine off. I want paid off properties. Obviously, I want the tenants to pay them off. I don't pay them off. The house that I live in, I do pay extra towards the mortgage to pay it off. And I know a lot of people don't believe in that, but I do. I actually look at my house as an asset. I know you're taught not to, but it's an asset. It's an asset for me. When I go to get lines of credit, I include my house in the equity, and they lend to me according to the equity in my house and all of my other houses. When I sell, which I won't, anytime soon, but when I sell, I'm gonna make money. It's an asset. So I look at my house as an asset. I've been able to use it. If I want to refinance and pull money out, then it's an asset. I can do that. I mean, I'm not going to, but I can do that if I want to. But you want to buy the properties right, according to the formula, pay them down, and then pay them off, and just let your tenants do that. Now, when my daughter acquires these properties, she's got paid for real estate. And that's what building generational wealth and leaving a legacy, in my opinion, is all about. You want to do the best you can for the next generation. You want to do the best you can. Keep in mind all the expenses that you're going to have with your buy and hold. Don't think that if you're renting the property for $2,000 a month and your mortgage is $15, or $1,200. Let's say your mortgage is $1,200, you're renting for $2,000. The difference is $800 a month. That's not your positive cash flow, because you still have utilities, maintenance. You still have, if it's in an HOA, you've got HOA dues. If it's a condo, you got condo association dues. If you get a property manager, you got to pay your property manager. So all of those kind of things, keep those things in mind. And when you do your numbers, now when we're renting, we've got to do after repair value comps. But when you're renting, you also have to do rental comps, because you want to make sure, at minimal, in my opinion, at minimal, you're going to make $500 or $600 a month in positive cash flow once you've paid the mortgage and all your other expenses, monthly expenses. Maintenance and all those kinds of things. You're going to make at least $500 to $600 a month every single month. Even if it's a property in an area where it's going to appreciate really good, I want to start with at least $500 or $600 a month. Now, if it's in an area like Baltimore that's not going to appreciate, I want to start with $8,000, $9,000, $1,000 a month in positive cash flow. And so all my properties in Baltimore, I get at least $1,000 a month in positive cash flow. How are we going to fund these buy and hold? So we actually fund them sort of the same way we fund our fix and flips. You can get the institutional lenders like a Bank of America, or you can get them to do long-term financing. The way I primarily do mine is I have a property, for example, in Annapolis, Maryland. And so I actually bought that property using a hard money lender. And so the hard money lender lent me the money for acquisition, to buy the property, rehab, and I got a private lender on the property in Annapolis to lend me the money for closing costs. So I used my regular formula as if I was flipping the property. So I bought the property right, I got it financed, I renovated the property, then I rented the property through Anne Arundel County voucher system, Section 8, and then I refinanced the property using my line of credit, paid back the hard money lender, paid back the private lender. Now I had a property that I put no money into, that I started off renting that property out for around $600 or $700 a month in positive cash flow. And now the mortgage balance is about $200,000. So, and that one's worth over $500,000 as well in Annapolis. And so what I just described to you is what's called the BRRRR method. And that's how I primarily buy all of my buy and holds, using the BRRRR method, the method I just described, where I buy the property right, I renovate the property, I rent the property, refinance the property, get all my money back, and then I use that money to repeat the process. We have loans now on the refinance side where there's no doc loans. They're just looking at, you've got to have at least a 640 credit score, and they're just basically looking for your lease, and they want to make sure you've got a positive cash flow, no documents, 30-year loan. Interest rates are, whatever the interest rates are. Most banks have these programs. They call them NONI loans. I forget what NONI stands for, but I know it's a no doc loan. But yeah, so that's what I use. That's how I buy my buy and holds, using the BRRRR method. So you can Google the Burr method, but that's how and so with the Burr method, which is just like just the best way to build a portfolio of properties, because you're building a portfolio of properties and building wealth and building passive income, dude, using none of your own money. Like, how great is that? And in some cases, if you get the right appraisal, you'll put money into your pocket. Like, Google Burr, BRRRR, and then so that's what I do. You can build wealth that way. All right, let's talk about tenants. When we're buying and holding, you guys, we want to minimize turnover. One of my tenants just moved out because they hadn't been paying throughout the pandemic, and they knew that the moratorium was coming. They knew that I was going to evict them, so they just moved out. And so when they moved out, I didn't know whether to be happy or sad. I mean, obviously it was great news because they weren't paying. But now that they're out, and they were market rate tenants, they weren't Section 8. And so when they moved out, I thought to myself, well, it's not a bad thing. Now I can rent it out Section 8, which I've already done. I've already done that. But now I've got to go over there and see how much they tore the property up, because tenant turnover is the worst. When you're buying and holding and building a portfolio, you want to do everything you can to keep those tenants in there, because turnover means now I've got to spend money fixing the house back up. But more importantly, I'm going a few months, 2, 3, 4 months with no rent, with no rental income. Like, that's the worst thing. Now, lucky for me, went over to the property and was like, it was in good shape. Like, let's do it. It was in good shape. I was happy. You know, I still had a contract to go over there, and they didn't have to do much, just clean up a few things, because I had already renovated the property about 5 years ago. So they didn't have to do much. And so I was happy. I was thankful. We put the property back on the market quickly, got another voucher holder. And so that all worked out. But you've got to minimize tenant turnover. It's the worst. That's where you lose your money as a buy and hold landlord. You lose your money there with tenant turnover. Minimize, be nice. That tenant is not your enemy. The tenant is your friend. The tenant is taking care of your property. I got some colleagues of mine, actually, one of my agents, she just sold her house. She actually sold it to me, but she rented that property out for almost 25 years to the same tenant, and it was a voucher holder. So she was getting paid for 25 years, paid her house off. Actually, the Prince George's County government paid her house off. She had the same tenant for 25 years. She treated them well. They stayed for 25 years. And so that's what you want. She didn't have to deal with tenant turnover, fixing property up, any of those things, because it can be a headache. And so that's what you want. I know some other colleagues, if the kids get straight A's or A's on a report card, he gives them money. The tenant pays on time, because even with voucher holders, in most cases, there's a small portion that they have to pay. If they pay that for 11 months in a row, the month of Christmas, December, he says, you don't have to pay me for that month. He does a number of things so that he doesn't have to deal with tenant turnover. And he does a great job. He goes way out of his way. Some would say he does too much, but I understand the model. I understand the business model. Let's retain these tenants and not only save money from turnover, but make money because they're there. The governments are paying. Look, you guys, when I was young in my 20s and I learned about buy and hold and voucher holders, the government was going to pay, I was like, dude, this is a gold mine. Like, how come everybody's not doing this? The government is actually going to pay their rent. And I was thinking, in my buy and hold, there's two issues that I have in my mind. Number one, are the tenants going to pay me and pay me on time? And are they going to tear up the property? And the answer for voucher holders is no for both. Because number one, government's paying the rent. And number two, government is coming once a year to do an inspection, and they know it. And they'll do an inspection. They'll inspect the property. They'll give the landlord a list of things to do, and they give the tenant a list of things to do. The tenant doesn't pay, guess what? Section 8 kicks them out the program. They don't want that because in most jurisdictions, you're not allowed to come back in the program, number one. And then number two, there's always sometimes a waiting period, a year. I hear about 3-year wait to get on the Section 8 list. And so they don't want that. So they take care of the properties. I've never, ever had a tenant tear up my property. I've never have. Section 8 has just been wonderful. It's been stress-free. Obviously, here and there, there's issues that I run over or get my contractor to run over and fix, sometimes without question. But I do that because I want to retain. I don't want turnover. Last thing I want to talk about in terms of buy and hold is a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my agents are doing short-term rentals. And so vacation rentals, Airbnb, that kind of thing. High demand now, primarily because people they don't want to be in hotels because of, the pandemic and COVID, and they'd rather be contained in a sanitized house versus, being around elevators and lobbies around a whole lot of people that could give them COVID. So Airbnb, there's a shortage of Airbnbs now, shortage. Airbnb stock is just gone skyrocket. And it will always stay that way because people prefer to stay in a place that's less populated, which is the house versus a big hotel. And so, there's so many of my agents that are doing Airbnb and vacation homes. And you'd actually be surprised. I've got one of my agents who moved out of her house in an area called Capitol Heights, Maryland, and she's rented it out Airbnb. She's put it on Airbnb.com and VRBO, and it stays full. No vacancies, stays full. Everything's systematized digitally. One of my buddies runs his whole business from his phone. He's got a house in Myrtle Beach. He can let people in by using certain codes on his phone, let the garage door up, have the cleaning people go in, let them in, everything. And then Airbnb and VRBO does all the check-in, check-out, deposits, pay, all that. And so everything is digital and virtual. That's the world we're in. And so I would look into Airbnb in certain areas. It's just wonderful. Vacation rentals, wonderful. Look, you guys, I've kept you guys on here far too long. We're over an hour. I didn't expect to talk an hour. Go to my Instagram, Greg Bennett Invest. My Facebook, I think it's the Bennett Team on Facebook. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be giving you more and more content, great information. I want you to be wealthy. Real estate investing is one of the ways that you can do that. But choose the right strategies, choose them wisely, always end with your buy and hold strategy. And that's whether you're buying and holding residential rentals, commercial, multifamily. A lot of my students are into multifamily, vacation rentals, whatever that is, buy and hold, passive income. Passive income is what we need more and more of. We need passive income from multiple streams, not just real estate, but through other business ventures. We need multiple streams. All right, you guys, God bless. Take care. I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.